So there's a concept in Japanese aesthetics called yugen. Yugen describes an awareness of the universe that triggers an emotional response too powerful to speak for words. I believe that nature has many powers. Power to teach, power to inspire, power to connect. The power to connect not just to the earth as we experience it today, but to those who came before us, those who share our journey with us, and those who come after us. I believe that everyone should have the experience of exploring nature in a way that gives them that sense of yugen. My name is Matt Gaskins, and the way that I experience yugen is by traveling off-road 4x4 vehicles. My journey started in the year 2000 when I bought a 1995 Jeep Cherokee XJ with huge 28-inch tires, and I had the desire to eventually go up to massive 33-inch tires once I had the ability and the money saved up to go to bigger tires. When I bought the Jeep, I didn't really know what I was doing. So I grabbed an AOL disc that had some minutes left on it, and I went to AskJeeps.com and said, how do I get going when I go off-road? And I found a place in Colorado called Idaho Springs, about an hour west. And I packed up my Jeep to head out on this journey with my printed MapQuest instructions in hand. And my parents stopped me and said, what are you doing? Where are you going? Who are you going with? What happens if you get stuck or you break down? Those are all great questions. I didn't have good answers to, but I knew I needed to explore because that's what my heart was telling me my purpose in life would be, is to go out and explore nature. And so they told me to be home by dinner, and they let me go. And I remember the first time that my tires touched dirt, and I pulled the transfer case lever to put it in four-wheel drive. My heart started racing, and it felt freedom and liberation like I had never experienced in my entire life. I was so excited but nervous because I didn't want to get stuck or break anything. And so I'd drive about 100, 200 feet. I would park the Jeep, I'd walk ahead. I would see what was in front to make sure I wasn't going to damage the vehicle. And then I'd get back in and repeat all day. At the end of the day, I really felt like I had found something that would be a lifelong purpose for me to not only explore nature and find my yugen, but also be able to connect with friends. I've been doing this for about 24 years now recreationally, and I had the honor to also be able to do it professionally. I spent 3.5 years at Rivian from 2019 through last year, initially helping set up parts of the business, but then I was able to transition into a special projects role where I got to help launch the R1T and the off-road journey in Breckenridge, Colorado, the R1S in New York, and then eventually the Tread Lightly partnership. I believe very strongly in improving your skills and your knowledge as you progress in something that you care about. And so I joined Tread Lightly as a master tread trainer to try to help educate and inspire others to protect this precious resource that we have. I also joined the board of Tread Lightly recently at the end of last year. And very recently, I joined Rivian Clubs of America as the Chief Vision Officer to set up a program to help inspire and teach people throughout the country how to explore safely and responsibly. You may be asking why that's important. The reality is the off-road space has exploded in popularity in the last 20 years or so, but really took off after COVID. That's a combination of vehicles being produced that are incredibly capable and user-friendly, combined with things like social media, really cool videos and pictures that you see that inspire people to go out and explore. But what hasn't happened is funding sources and the resources to manage these assets have not risen commensurately with the popularity of off-road vehicles. And so what we've seen is that certain areas have experienced pressure, as you've probably seen. Moab just saw 317 miles of trails get closed. And I don't want to point fingers at any particular user groups or public agencies because it's a complicated issue. But the reality is we have a responsibility to try to find ways to work with these agencies and be the best trail stewards we possibly can. This picture here at the bottom is a place called Dead Man Point, which, as you can see on this map up here, is now a closed route. I saw this for the first time last February. I pre-ran it for an organized event in Moab, and the trail looked pretty easy, and honestly, I kind of wanted something harder, but I thought, this could be a cool lookout. And when I stood on this edge and took this picture, the silence was deafening. the wind that was coming up was so cool, and I could see in every direction. And it really moved me, almost to tears, to be honest with you. And so when I came back from the actual trail run, the organized trail run, a couple months later, I told my wife and my friends, we have to do this trail. It's not technical, trust me, it's worth it. And so when we came back to this, everyone agreed this was absolutely spectacular. We made plans to come back every year. And then a couple months later, it was closed. So this is really a tremendous risk that we face for the things that we love to enjoy. So we really have to do the best that we can to be stewards of this privilege that we have. A lot of folks come to me and they say, hey, I've never been off-road. I want some tips and tricks on how to be proficient at it, and I don't know where to start. So where should I start? The very first thing you can do is get training and education. That can be online resources, that can be YouTube videos, assuming that the YouTube videos are responsible, trail etiquette. But the one thing that I tell people is beyond training, the best thing you can do to improve your experience is simply airing down your tires. And the way that I remember the benefits of airing down your tires are these 4 benefits. It's better for the tire, the truck, the traveler, and the trail. And I took some liberties with truck, of course, because not everyone drives a truck, so please forgive me for that. So when you look at how it's better for the tire, it increases the contact patch. When you look at the rear tire on this vehicle here, you can see that the contact patch is very elongated. Most people think when you air down, it actually gives you additional width. Really, it actually elongates the tire, which gives you tremendously improved traction. When you look at the front tire on the left side of the vehicle, you can see it's a little bit off the ground. And so if this rear tire was fully inflated and it wasn't aired down, you'd have a very small area contacting the ground to propel the vehicle forward. So it is fantastic for increasing the contact patch, which increases traction. The next thing is, as it conforms to the surfaces, it reduces the likelihood of punctures and damage. The analogy I like to share is, imagine you take a party balloon and you blow it up to 100% of its capacity, and you roll it around outside in the gravel. It will likely pop very, very quickly. But if you take that same balloon and you let about half the pressure out, and you roll it around, it can conform to those sharp obstacles and make it more resilient and more resistant to puncture and tire damage. The next thing is, as you can probably imagine, when you increase traction, it's much better for the vehicle itself. In this case, it says truck, but it's really about the vehicle. So when you have a deflated tire that's maintaining its contact with the ground, you lessen the likelihood of wheel slip. And if anyone here has had a wheel that lifts up or slips wildly and catches traction, it sends a driveline shock through the vehicle, which can be very bad in great things. And so it really helps reduce the driveline stress. Another thing a lot of people don't think about naturally is that your tire is actually part of the suspension of your vehicle. And so when you're going over bumps, washboard, or whatever type of bumps you experience, if you deflate your tires, it can actually supplement the work that the suspension is doing, which has another benefit. It's better for the traveler. If you've ever been in a vehicle with fully inflated tires over really rough roads, it's hard on the body. And you use the driver in a little bit better position because you can see the bumps coming, but if your partner or your friend is sitting in the passenger seat or in the back seat, they're experiencing those vibrations in a way that's very uncomfortable. I've even seen dogs and things at the back go flying when people don't air it down. So it's really a huge benefit to the travelers and to the occupants of your vehicle. And lastly, and most importantly, it's better for the trail. If you're keeping tires on the ground and you're keeping high levels of traction, you're actually reducing wheel slip, which reduces the impacts of erosion on the trail. Public land managers like to point to things like erosion on the trail as reasons to close it. And so that's something we really want to avoid. And I know a lot of folks will say, well, I don't need to air down, it's an easy trail. I don't need to put it in four-wheel drive because it's an easy trail. The reality is when you do that, you are creating a wheel slip condition that exacerbates erosion and gives public land managers a great reason to close the trail. So that kind of brings me to this really important topic. Again, I care a lot about tread lightly because it provides resources to folks who want to know how to improve their experience off-road, and mitigate resource damage. And I'll kind of quickly go through these because I have some examples on future slides. The first is travel responsibly. And the easiest way to do this is to simply stay on the trail. This environment that we're in right now is a little bit different, but if you're on a trail through the forest, it's pretty obvious where the trail actually is. And oftentimes when you have a muddy situation, snow, folks will try to actually go around the obstacle, and that's called trail grading. Someone else will come by and they'll say, oh, someone's creating a bypass. And they'll continually take this bypass to the point you can't see where the original trail is. That, again, is one of the reasons why public land managers like to close trails. So it's really important to travel responsibly. Respect the rights of others. Most trails have multiple users. You have off-road vehicles like 4x4s, side-by-sides, dirt bikes, mountain bikes, hikers, and horseback riders. If you see other vehicles on the trail or other people or other animals, respect them. Give them enough space to pass. Don't kick up dust and dirt. And just try to make sure that things move very cautiously. So the old adage is if you're going uphill, you have the right of way. But if you have one vehicle in a convoy, one vehicle by itself going uphill, 12 vehicles coming down, probably makes sense to stop, have a conversation, or simply just back down to allow the folks to safely pass. So a lot of this is more common sense. Also out west, you'll have situations where you'll have cattle guard gates. And if the gate is closed when you approach it, the responsible thing to do is to open the gate, go through it, and then close it. If you find it open, leave it open. These are things that we need to do to ensure that people are being respected. Educate yourself is largely what we're doing right now, but it's also doing research on, hey, I'm going out to Colorado this summer. What forest ranger district am I in? What is the vegetation like where I'm going? What are the seasons in which this trail is even open? There's a really cool trail called Rattlesnake Canyon on the western slope of Colorado that was scheduled to open on April 15th. I showed up on April 20th, and the gate was still closed. I could have opened it, and I could have gone past, but I had contacted the ranger, and they said, there's so much snow on the trail that it's super muddy, and we don't want people driving on it because it will cause erosion. That leads really nicely into void-sensitive areas. This can not only mean things like alpine tundra, but situations where the trail is very wet. And do your part. Doing your part is all of these things, but then it's also saying, I really care about this trail system, I care about this public land, so I want to participate in a trail cleanup. I want to participate in a volunteer program. So one of the things that we just talked about is avoiding sensitive areas. And these vary depending on where you are in the country. I love Moab. I've been going to Moab for 20 years now. And I had no idea what this crusty stuff on the far left was. I later learned that it's cryptobiotic soil. And cryptobiotic soil can take hundreds, if not thousands of years to form. And I like to refer to it as the glue of the desert. It's organic matter that binds soil together so that things like roots can take hold and create life. What's fascinating about cryptobiotic soil is that it's very resilient left alone, but if you step on it or drive on it, it can actually destroy it and destroy the life that depends on it. Here in this middle photo, you can see more crypto that's starting to erode a little bit, but life is still hanging on. And then on the far right, you can see that this is crypto that's been kind of trampled a bit, and there's little dunes forming. Eventually, there won't be enough to sustain this life, and this life will have to reset. It's something that I was very ignorant to. Someone had to show me what this was. And this was also before there is the resources we have online today. But it's very important to understand the places where you go and understand the sensitivities that are there. Again, being from Colorado, I love high alpine trails like this. This is St. John, just above Breckenridge, Colorado, between Montana and Breckenridge. And these scars pointed out by the red arrows, they've been there literally for decades. This occurred from very likely someone pulling over to let someone pass. They were being polite. They were trying to not create a traffic jam or a trail conflict. But unfortunately, the soil was very wet when this happened. And by driving off trail just a single time, it created these permanent scars. The thing that's interesting about alpine tundra is, again, it's very resilient, like cryptobiotic, when it's left alone. But the growing season is very short. Depending on the year, this can only be growing for maybe 6 to 14 weeks. And so when you have damage like this, the ecosystem doesn't have time to regenerate. And when special interest groups, land managers see this type of damage occur, because they have limited resources, it's often easier to simply close the trail rather than put up signs and repair it. So a lot of folks also ask me, well, what are the basics? And I know about tread lightly, I know about herring down, but what else is there? This is the graphic, and I won't spend too much time on it, but it's really important to kind of go through these steps as you prepare for your journey. Get to know your vehicle, especially if you bought something new. Literally get on the ground, go underneath the car, and see where the differentials come down. See what things are vulnerable. It could be a shock mount. If you drive a Rivian, it's really flat underneath, but there are still things that are vulnerable, and you really want to know where those things are so that as you approach obstacles, you can avoid hitting the sensitive parts. Make sure it's mechanically sound. I recently led a trip for a group on a place called Slaughterhouse Gulch in Colorado. And the way this trail works is you go down this really steep hill, and then there's like an area where you hang out, and you come up another really steep hill with mobiles and rocks and all this stuff. And a woman came over to me and said, hey, my Forerunner isn't in four-wheel drive. It's not showing that it's a four-wheel drive. So I crawled underneath it, and I found that she had a blown CV, and it was never in four-wheel drive. And now we had a pretty difficult time to decide what to do to get her vehicle out. That was a bad time to discover that the vehicle wasn't sound. So please make sure that your vehicle is ready for the trail before you attempt it. Research where you want to go. There's so many great mapping resources these days. There's Onyx, there's Gaia, there's Trails Off-Road, there's forums. So figure out where you want to go and create a plan, pack accordingly. This time of year, it gets darker. If you're leaving for a trail or 2 o'clock, you should probably bring some food, some water, sleeping bags, and things to stay overnight in case something goes sideways. Tear down your tires and adjust your settings. And part of this goes back to getting to know your vehicle. When you have a modern vehicle, there's tons of settings to become familiar with. The right way to do it is at home, before you're on the trail. When you're off-road, and again, this is probably not the right thing to mention this, but drive as slow as possible and as fast as necessary. And again, this is dependent on where you are. Desert dunes is very different than alpine tundra, but you really want to try to mitigate resource damage when you drive off-road. Stop and assess your surroundings and use your spotter. I see sometimes people want to just send it because they really want to just see what they can do. It's best to get out, make sure that it's appropriate for your vehicle, and then always tread lightly, and the end goal is to protect our access to public lanes. So that's all I have. I was curious if anyone had any questions or anything like that before we get going on the trail today. I know this is kind of a new environment for some of you, and just curious if anyone had any thoughts before I hand it over.